Welcome to Life in the Bricks podcast, where we talk to real people about programs that enhance our community so that we can build bigger and better portfolios while providing options for our residents to achieve self-sufficiency. I'm your host, Antonio McGinnis, Executive Director, CEO with the Huntsville Housing Authority. All right. Welcome to Life in the Bricks podcast, where we talk to real people who are making a great impact on this city and who are great partners of the Huntsville Housing Authority. So today, I'm excited to have the manager of urban and long-range planning with the City of Huntsville, a true friend to the Housing Authority, Mr. Dennis Madsen, on the show. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on here. I am happy to do it. Anything for y'all. I love working with you guys.
Man, we definitely appreciate it. So we're gonna dive right into this, and I wanna start out by allowing you the opportunity to introduce yourself to those of our listeners who may not know who you are and where you're from. So could you just kind of let us know where you're from?
Yeah. I tell folks I'm married into Huntsville. My wife's originally from here. You can probably tell that just from listening to me that I'm not from Huntsville. I grew up all over the Northeast and the Midwest, but I lived for the longest time in Atlanta. I still have, it's kind of my adopted hometown. Atlanta is a fantastic city. Learned a lot there. Got most of my education there. Did a lot of planning work there, and that's where I became a city planner. Was in Atlanta. The great thing about Atlanta is you can see some kind of bad examples of city planning there, but you can also see some really wonderful examples of city planning there. And the best part of Atlanta is it is a really profoundly diverse community. And I'm talking about, any way you measure in terms of race, income, where folks are from, any demographic measure. Atlanta is incredibly diverse. So it helps a planner kind of appreciate that when you are thinking about how you grow a city, when you're thinking about the issues that face the city, you got to think about everybody. I mean, you have to think about your full community, and that sometimes gets forgotten. And it's something it's going to be reminded every once in a while. There's a lot of people who live here that you don't run into every day that you have to be thinking of when you're doing your work.
Atlanta is definitely one of those cities.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next kind of follow-up question would be, what drew you into urban and long-range planning?
That's a great question. So I got my degree in architecture. I was working in architecture for a while, but I always kind of liked the bigger scale stuff. I liked cities. I liked the way they worked. I liked how they fit together. I loved the investments that communities made in themselves. I mean, when you go to a city that's really kind of putting its best foot forward in terms of the infrastructure it's building, or quality sidewalks and greenways, and parks, and the investment it makes in housing. That always kind of attracted me. I got kind of excited to see that and see how it worked and how it put together. And I got really, really lucky to work with some great couple of guys who had a planning firm in Atlanta. They taught me almost everything I know. And that just kind of sung for me. I mean, I loved engaging with the community. That's a big part of planning now. I think a lot of folks maybe think that decisions are kind of top down when it comes to city planning, when really they have to be community generated if they're going to be sustainable. There's no way as a planner I'm going to know your community as well as you do. I'm not going to know your commute or the issues that you have, or the things that you love about your neighborhood or your community as well as you do. So there has to be this back and forth. And it's again why I like working with you, Tony, and your team, is because you guys have that connection into your community. It's a great way to kind of learn about the specific community's needs.
It's a fun fact. I started out in architecture at A&M. By the time I was a junior, I went to my academic advisor, and I was passing the classes. I really loved architecture from a youth, but at this particular day, I went by and I was like, hey, I know I'm on this pathway. How much longer is it for me to graduate? And being a junior, and he said maybe 3.5, 4 more years.
Yeah.
To pivot. I said, okay,
Yeah,
what do I
they're
need to
trying
congratulate
to keep
for?
going.
Yeah,
I feel you.
I had to pivot a little bit, but it still has been one of those things that has intrigued me and to this day. But the next question would be something as as the manager of your department, and for a city like Huntsville that is growing by leaps and bounds, what does the day to day operation look like for you?
Oh,
And
it's never the same. We look at so a lot of my work really deals with long range planning. So we are about um, how are we growing? How do we think we're going to continue to grow? How is the city going to change over time, and how do we plan for it? So we manage things like our development review. So if you ever went on the city's website and typed in development review, what pops up is a document that every year we publish this, and it looks at where have houses been built, where have apartments been built, how much is the cost of housing changing, how many people are we adding in different parts of the city, what kinds of shops and development are happening around the city, so that we can see where our growth is occurring, but we also start to get an idea of where more growth is going to happen and what do we need to do to plan for it. Where do we need to plan new roads? Where do we need to potentially expand our transit network? Where do we need to add parks and green space? We work closely with the school system so that they know, hey, we're seeing a lot of new housing starts potentially happening here. Y'all are going to want to be ready in your capital plan in 5 years or 10 years to build a new facility here because we see some demand coming. So that's a lot of my day is say it's a really hazy crystal ball, but it's trying to figure out where's the city going and how do we plan for it best.
so when people, um, especially some of the listeners that we have on the show who are concerned about affordable housing, and they hear a term like long range planning,
Mhm.
it can kind of feel abstract.
Yeah.
How would you explain what that is in simple terms to those individuals who want to have a deeper connection to the city?
Yeah, especially if you're talking about housing, especially that is making sure that the city's not just planning to build a lot more housing, but also that it's building up and down the cost spectrum, or that we're helping kind of make that happen. So, Tony, you know this, but listeners may not be familiar with the idea that the city doesn't necessarily build housing. Right? We support housing development in certain areas. We can zone for it. We can create the roads and the greenways that service it. But we still need the market to kind of come and build that. But what the city can do is at least lay the groundwork to make sure that happens, and also encourage diverse housing. Right. The key is not everyone's going to want a house that looks like X in the location Y. They're going to want something that fits them, that's close to their work, that's close to their church, close to the schools that they want to send their kids to. And a lot of what we do is just try to make sure that we've got something for everyone. People can right size their community. They can find a housing that meets their space needs, meets their cost needs. It's in a neighborhood that they love and they feel comfortable in. It has the services around them that they want. So it's really about making sure that our city can meet the needs of every single person who chooses to be a part of Huntsville.
It's a great segue into the next question, which is, you oversee the city's comprehensive plan, which is called the big picture. Years ago, when I first heard that word, it excited me because I'm like, okay, what is the big picture for Huntsville? But what is it about the big picture that should excite everyday residents? What should we care about?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because it really, when we talk about a comprehensive plan, it's really comprehensive. It's an umbrella plan. It looks at everything from, where do roads and sidewalks go? Where do we need to build new parks? How do we need to grow our schools? How is our housing growing? Where do we need to see more housing? But even kind of the fun stuff too, like we have one part that is part of our comprehensive plan, which was to embrace the music economy. Right, there's North Alabama and really southeastern U.S. has a very rich music history. If you think of a lot of your favorite musical artists out there, a lot of them have roots in the South. There's a long music history in the South. We wanted to be able to grow that. We want to be able to support local musicians, but also all the industry that goes into creating and supporting music. So it's people who own or run venues, people who are promoters, things like that. So it's an example of us kind of thinking creatively in terms of growing not just your housing, but more jobs, supporting more different kinds of industry. Not everyone's going to have a gig out on the arsenal, right? What are the other things that you can do to earn a living here? And I think it's not just sort of science jobs, but it can be in the arts, it can be music, and I think some folks may realize we have a couple of Grammy Award winners who live right here in Huntsville. We have a couple of folks who live and practice their art in Huntsville who are on Billboard charts nationally and internationally. So there is real music power here. It's a part of who we are, and it's something that the comp plan can do is kind of help support that and grow that and allow more people to be a part of it.
And so with that big picture, one of the things that I wanted to ask is when you think big picture, bringing different people into the city and making sure everybody has a place and feel comfortable, how do you see decisions that are being made impacting housing for the working class and the people who have been here for years?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think that one of the biggest things is to make sure we're being as development friendly as we can to allow housing to get on the ground with minimal roadblocks. I mean, you want quality housing, you want it in the right place, you want it served by adequate infrastructure. You want the roads to be good to serve it. You want it to have sidewalks that serve it. You want it to have supportive services. But one of the most important things is just getting housing on the ground, right? That is supply and demand 101. But it's also about finding partnerships. And you and I have talked a lot about this. I think the city and housing authorities partnership is one of the most important partnerships out there because it also recognizes that while the market itself can provide a lot of housing, developers can provide a lot of housing, people who build subdivisions can. We know that there are a lot of things that the city, a lot of places where the city is going to have to get involved, and the housing authority is going to have to get involved to help move that needle and make sure that we're accommodating everyone, that we can hit those affordability targets. So a lot of what the comp plan looks at is how are we growing, where are we growing, and what type of housing is actually being built, and what kind of gaps does the city need to fill. I think you see it. You guys are obviously one of the heavyweights in that realm, but it's also other organizations like Habitat for Humanity, Lincoln Ministries, Neighborhood Concepts, folks who can really help fill in of public housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, recognizing that we need all of that. We need all of that to happen to make the kind of sustainable and inclusive city that I think we all want.
And it goes without saying the partnership that we have. And I think for a long time, the Housing Authority kind of sat in its own silo because the needs were different. But now with administration changing, Huntsville becoming that city where everybody wants to come, oftentimes we think about the folks who are white collar workers, but we tend not to think about those folks who are going to be providing services. So it's good to know that the big picture is including that and thinking about people who will be coming in, bringing family members that are not doctors or engineers or, white collar workers, but the folks who are going to be working in the gas stations, restaurants, in the hospitals even. And so that is exciting to me that we're thinking about that. But just kind of one other thing about the big picture, are there things in the program now that excite you about what's about to take place in Huntsville?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I get really excited about is I know it's not on everybody's radar, but kind of the Greenway connection and the alternative modes connections that we talk about. Better transit. If you look at a brand new transit station, which is spectacular, it's also oversized, right? They've built in intentionally room to grow in that transit center, so that as we have more opportunities, we can keep growing our transit offerings. But it's also for folks who want to bike and walk, just either for whether that's to get to work or for recreation, building out that network. Folks I'm sure have heard of the Sky Bridge, but that's a really kind of central piece to a broader network where you look at opportunities. We're working on a greenway that would basically depart from where the Sky Bridge is and connect all the way from downtown up to Alabama A&M. right? You could have this pathway that takes you there. You don't have to get in a car or ride a bus or anything like that. You have this safe, comfortable pathway to get you there, pathways to get you down to the river, really providing more folks other opportunities to get around their community. I think that's really important for a transportation network. For folks who have been to other cities like Atlanta, again, the Atlanta Beltline is a great example of that kind of investment and what it can do, because it isn't just a greenway. It's not just a place where people walk and bike, but it ends up creating community along it. You end up with new small businesses and new housing and new parks and new public art that all celebrate, being a part of Atlanta. And that to me is just really, really exciting, because these are the pieces that can bring people out of their homes and together. Right? And one of the things that is crucial in any community is helping everybody feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. That you don't feel like you're just, I'm in my little home, or I'm in my little neighborhood, but I feel like I'm part of a neighborhood. I feel like I'm part of Huntsville. That connection is really important. It's important to us emotionally and spiritually and financially, right? We want to be able to feel connected to go out and earn a living. We want to feel, connected and part of that workforce. But, I think connected people are happier people, and happier people are the ones that we hope to grow living here.
And man, I just feel like that's so powerful, because growing up in the city, there were times when I used to share with my friends, we felt so isolated. Maybe there was a mile radius in each way, that north, south, east, and west, that we felt comfortable going. But to have a city that's connected, where we can expand that and connect by either walking or bike transportation or whatever, it makes it a lot safer, and it just opens up the city, because I'm sure there are people here who just feel isolated, don't know about the opportunities that are around the city. But then most importantly, I think it's going to help us when it comes to getting people employed, breaking some of those barriers from transportation, of keeping people out of some of the jobs that are coming to Huntsville. So we're
100%.
definitely about
100%. Yeah.
let's pivot just a minute and talk about something that you and I've been working on for the last, almost 6.5, 7 years now.
Pre-COVID.
This is something that I think is going to be a game changer to Huntsville, a game changer to public housing. And, Choice Neighborhood has been around for years, but I think we have something very unique in the way we are approaching choice neighborhoods here in Huntsville. And let's talk about how exciting that's going to be for the residents, not only in public housing, but for everybody around the city.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's when you were talking about housing for a diverse workforce, that's a great example. I mean, it's the partnership that you and I have really celebrated with Huntsville Hospital. That's a part of that. That when you see employers recognizing the need for diverse housing for their workforce, and having public sector and private sector working together to advance that, I think it's incredible, because it recognizes not just the value of housing, but the value of what planners call placemaking. Right? It's not just about building 4 walls and a roof. It's about creating a neighborhood, comfortable streets, lots of trees, lots of community parks. That there's a sense of design to it, because everybody deserves to live in a well-designed, safe, comfortable neighborhood that helps them thrive. And I think that credit to HUD for really kind of continuing to refine the program to emphasize points of design, and then credit as well to housing authorities like all that recognize that need and recognize the opportunity to really start not just creating more housing for their residents, but creating better housing for the residents, and all the opportunities that come along with it. I mean, I'm hopeful, and I know there's a lot of uncertainties at times on the national level. I'm hopeful that that CNI continues, because I think you've got so many other potential projects that this wouldn't be the only one. This could potentially be the first one in a number of them that helps you deliver new modern housing and more programs to the residents.
You said something that will probably challenge a lot of people, that folks deserve to live in decent, safe, affordable housing. And there'll be people who will challenge that. And I have to, agree with what you said. There are people who deserve it. Our housing stock is old. And we're considered one of those agencies who takes care of our property. Last year we had our evaluations. Every one of our properties except one scored in the 90s, and the property that didn't got like an 85. But people don't necessarily understand that there's only so much you can do with property that's 60, 70 years old. And the Housing Authority here in Huntsville, we're celebrating 85 years of service in this community. We've been around for that long providing housing, and to have units that are so old and to continue putting money into them, it just seems like at some point we're not going to be able to put any more dollars into those units. And so to have an opportunity like this will be the catalyst for other opportunities, because we have such rich land. We have land that could benefit. And I don't think that we've done a good job of making the best use of the land. A lot of people run density. Well, we need to embrace it, because that's the only way that I feel like we'll be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are in, to continue to create that affordable housing and that decent housing that builds communities like Huntsville in a way that you won't see in other parts of the country.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for the housing authority. You are sitting on land that 60, 70 years ago they were giving it away because folks were there was this exodus to the suburbs, and I think nationally, regionally, and locally we've seen we've seen people interested in returning to the core of a city, and because there's character and there's interest and there's culture in the core of a city. And what that's done, fortunately, is housing authorities that are sitting on a lot of that land, all of a sudden that has new value and there's new interest. And I think it's a great way for y'all to be able to leverage that new interest into a new housing for your residents and additional housing. And you're right. I think the density issue, we're not talking about building a bunch of 20-story towers, but I think with a well-designed increase in density, you're talking, townhomes and 2 and 3-story walk-ups, nothing massive. You can create much better community, much better units, much higher quality housing. I agree with you entirely that a lot of the stuff that was built back in 50s, 60s, 70s, it wasn't designed to last this long. Y'all are keeping it together with spit and duct tape as best you can, but it was not designed to hold up this long. It's overdue for a refresh. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to put better housing for everybody on the ground in those neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I'm excited, man. I went over a couple of weeks ago and start seeing dirt move around, and I know there are some residents over in that community who are really, really excited. And the thing that we have to reiterate to the public, that residents are going to have the opportunity to come back. This is not one of those gentrification projects where the folks who live there won't get the opportunity to come back. The residents will have the right to return, and I think that's one of the things that I applaud HUD on the most. We're not saying give everybody a voucher and they're out of there, they can't come back. No, the residents who live there have the right to come back, and that's a game changer to me, because they have some emotional equity in those neighborhoods, and they deserve the opportunity to come back.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the gentrification word, because you and I have had this discussion offline many times, where the HUD program was designed initially kind of as blight mitigation. You've got older communities that are kind of discouraging reinvestment in neighborhoods. You're actually in the reverse position. You're dealing with investment that's already happening around your properties. This is a way to ensure we're mitigating gentrification. We allow folks, and we help folks stay in the community, that they don't get displaced. That's at the core, I think, of our strategy for Mill Creek.
Yeah, because people are comfortable in spaces that they're familiar in, and they can grow and they can thrive. And if you choose to try another neighborhood, then that's your right, just like everybody else. So I'm excited about that because, with everything going on and new buildings and new opportunities, I'm excited for the residents who will thrive not only by having a nice place, but the partners that we're working with, Urban Strategies being the people
Yeah,
part, they're going to really help elevate the mindset and the economic mindset of the residents who are there so that, you know, if they are living in a subsidized unit, maybe they'll be able to transfer into an unsubsidized unit or even transfer out if that's something that they choose. So it has all the right elements of what I think this should look like as we progress out of self and into a state of self-sufficiency. So
yeah.
it's
Well, you hit that word. That first word in the CNI program is choice, right? And that
mhm.
is, we're helping give folks choice, and I think that's crucial.
So as we kind of wrap this thing down, man, I can't believe it's already been 27 minutes, but
You and I can talk.
man. But listen, this is one of the things I want to talk about. As Huntsville is one of the fastest growing cities in the country, what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities or some of the biggest challenges that can come with that kind of growth?
Yeah, I think for challenges, it is exactly what you know been talking about, which is making sure we're getting housing on the ground, getting a lot of housing on the ground, getting diverse and attainable and accessible housing on the ground that people can move into, that they can find the home that works for them. But I think the opportunity is you have a lot of people who see the investment that the community of Huntsville is making in itself, and they want to be a part of that, and that gives us more tools to do cool things for ourselves, like things like the Sky Bridge, things like the new park that is that linear park that's going to run right through the middle of Mill Creek. We can keep doing and adding more cool things like that. We can help our schools get even better. We can do all these great things that it's not just about the city growing in terms of population. It's also kind of us maturing, right? Adding the cool things that a really livable, a really great city has, and that are kind of accessible to everybody.
And so, um, as I think about the challenge, one of the things that I'm always aware of is we cannot continue to build around the inner city like it's not there.
Yeah.
And so I'm just glad we're having these kind of conversations and, glad about us being able to sit at the table, housing authority
Yeah.
and the city, because in a lot of cities that are growing, you have that friction and
Yes.
you have that barrier that's been created. And so I'm just glad that we can sit down and talk about what's good for the city
Yeah.
because oftentimes people think that the housing authority wants to protect residents in housing and the city doesn't care, but we've been able to dispel that myth and realize that in order for Huntsville to be the Huntsville that everybody wants to see, everybody has to have a seat at the table. Everybody has to have affordable, decent housing, and it shouldn't look different. And so, again, excited about the partnership.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely. Same thing. Absolutely. I just echo everything you said. It's recognizing from a city planner's perspective, there is no one entity that controls the way a city grows. It is a series of partnerships, private sector, public sector, organizations like the Housing Authority, all have to be singing from the same sheet of music.
what are some of the closing remarks that you might have as we close out and look to the future
Mhm.
for affordable housing? And what would you have to say to a resident who's living here as a city planner? What hope should I be able to have as a person who may be living in public housing right now?
Yeah, I think that the best part is that you've got your community leaders are all working together, right? They all recognize the direction. That's in, as you mentioned in other communities, that can oftentimes be the biggest hurdle. The fact that we've got everybody kind of pulling in the same direction is huge. But I think that the thing to get excited about is as we grow, that growth is just going to be more opportunity and more opportunity for everybody, whether it's new housing or new jobs or new schools. That opportunity is only going to increase. exciting. That's the part to be excited. There's so many other things that we can look forward to in terms of what our community is going to be able to provide to every resident.
Dennis, thank you so much for joining us. Man, I appreciate it. I mean, taking time out of your schedule to do this, I think it speaks volumes of you and the leadership. And we appreciate you being on the show today, and look forward to many, many more conversations about housing and how we can help grow this city together, man. We appreciate you.
I love it. Grow this city together. That's a great tagline right there. I appreciate being on.
So this concludes our episode today. Please share this on all your social media platforms. And again, we thank you for joining us today. We've come to the end of the podcast today. Please share the link on all your social media platforms. We hope that you all will join us again next time. Until then, keep serving and keep pushing. This has been another amazing episode of Life in the Bricks podcast. Peace.